All right, I'm currently on the phone with Rob. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hello, I am Rob. I am the lead singer and songwriter for Pine Tree Janitorial Service, a punk grunge band. I play bass in another band called Circles We Draw, and I'm also involved with starting a record label, Kind of Vague Records, and have a weekly radio show, Kind of Vague Radio, on Denver Open Media 92.9 FM every Thursday from 7 through 9 p.m. So I guess that's enough introduction.
Sure. So tell me a bit about, how you first found music. What was it about music that, spoke to you and made you want to like build a life of it?
Geez, I don't know. I guess that's something that a lot of musicians intrinsically sort of do. It's interesting. The longer you do it, the more times you see there's people that are just intrinsically motivated. It's like, what would we do if we didn't make music? We would go insane. And or people that just think, oh, that sounds fun, it's a hobby or whatever, and they be in a band for a little while, maybe a year, and then they're like, gosh, it's a lot of work. Might not do that anymore. So I guess going back to what intrinsically motivates all of us, I'm not sure we know. I'm not sure I can tell you that. That's the burning question. What motivates an artist?
What do you think it was for you specifically? Just you heard music one day and that was the path you wanted to take, or?
My entire life, it's loomed really large. Some things just click for people, right? And for me, music always just was the thing that made sense. I remember when I was a kid, I would play John Williams scores, specifically Star Wars. And I would just be so enamored with it. And I later discovered, and that was when like little, like, I don't know, maybe 4 or something, like just little. Or when Star Wars came out the year I was born. So, I got on VHS young. And so, just from that till early records, like even kids records, going into, 50s music that I kind of inherited from my parents. And then, of course, I discovered the Beatles, and I was just really obsessed with them for, a good deal of my life through adolescence up till Nirvana. And then we could go to Radiohead. So, I guess, those are just influences, I guess, but just music has just always been the thing to do. And as soon as I could, I was only 15. I guess I could have asked for one earlier, but it was around 15 years old where I asked my parents for a guitar, specifically because of Nirvana. The Beatles were always just too daunting for me, big George Martin productions. I just couldn't wrap my head around how anyone could do such a thing. But I could, once I got into Nirvana, I kind of could wrap my head around how you could slam out a bar chord. So
Sure.
That's really what got me into playing the electric guitar.
So it was about in your teenage years when you decided to take that next step with it and learn an instrument.
Yeah. Well, I grew up playing piano. I took piano lessons, so I already knew piano going into it all.
Okay. And then when you did start learning, you kind of mentioned that, Nirvana was the influence there. Did you start just learning tabs, or did you do like traditional one-on-one lessons?
I started with one-on-one lessons, didn't get very far with those. The guy was trying to teach me some Chuck Berry and stuff, and I might be able to play it today, but back then. So actually I kind of gave up pretty early, but those early tab books, that Nevermind tab book, maybe the Incesticide tab book, they really saved me from, because then I could slam out a couple chords and voila, lithium. And it really gave me the fuel to be able to go, well, I guess if he could make these songs with these four-ish chords, I could find 4 bar chords perhaps,
So once you did kind of, make that connection, what was kind of the next step there? Did you start looking for other musicians to play with, or was it kind of writing your own material?
Yeah, I really immediately went from playing other people's stuff to writing my own material. Just immediately. They always went hand in hand. In fact, even going back to my piano days as a kid, even like 6 years old in piano lessons, I would write compositions then. Mostly just like chord arpeggiations and stuff like that. I mean, I was no musical prodigy, but I just couldn't, I could never really just play, I'm not a very good musician in that way. So for me, it's like really always been about composing. So as soon as I got enough tools, enough chords that I could write a song, I wrote a song. I had a friend in high school. We kind of played together, but it never really went anywhere. It wasn't until I went to college that's later out in Kansas where I finally joined a band.
Okay. And so throughout that kind of, journey of being a composer, what was kind of the hopes that you would get there? Was it, eventually in Kansas joining a band, or did you have a different vision?
When you first, when I was just like a kid writing songs, it's just like an activity. It's just, you know what I mean? I would just do that. Even to this day, it's just like, oh, I'm bored. I could play a video game, or maybe I could strum a guitar. I could walk over the piano. So it's just always been in the wheelhouse of just something to do. And, you write compositions and, yeah, it was much later and then I eventually joined a band and yeah, that was a whole leap and I wasn't even a very good guitarist then, but I just happened to know the guy. And I feel like a lot of times someone has to do that to a young musician who's like, I don't feel like I'm good enough for this and that. And come on, we'll get you. As long as you're willing and able, we'll train you up.
So tell me about that experience in college joining your first band.
I worked with this guy, Lonnie Fisher, who still plays out in Kansas to this day. Lonnie Fisher and the Funerals, his primary band. And back then, the act was called Sturgeon Mill. And yeah, just working, making sandwiches. I was delivering the things. You talk to the guy, you hang out with him. You in a band? Oh, I like to write music, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it was like that. And joined the band and
It was really kind of like a garage band type thing where, you're
very
looking for
much so.
just local musicians to kind of, just get your chops wet kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, a very interesting period for me. I was just trying to figure things out. And what's interesting is even then I'd be like, oh no, is this thing too simple or is this too whatever rudimentary because I didn't have the chops to make something complex. And nowadays I usually look for the simple rudimentary thing to do. Less self-conscious about it, but
Sure. So tell me about, the steps after that. What happened from, that first band that you're in college to kind of where you are now?
so the journey was played in that band for a couple of years. We did some good stuff. We made an LP and did a little touring around the Midwest and West. And but eventually it broke up. Um, yeah, and it didn't really break up kind of well because there was like alcohol issues and some cliche stuff, I guess. And but to me, I don't know. I was just like a little bit disillusioned with it. I moved back out to Colorado, where I live now, and he got basically kind of started being a tech professional, and didn't really do much with music for a while. Still have an acoustic guitar, maybe wrote songs now and then, went through periods where I might have played it, but
Okay.
put it down
And
for a
then
good while.
how did you get into like the broadcasting component of it?
Well, that's a whole lot later after having a whole journey through tech, deciding I didn't want to do that, uh, taking a little bit of a sabbatical, getting back, and then and then deciding, you know what, if I don't do stuff with music, and I wasn't very happy. Even I was making a decent living, money, but just like the happiness factor wasn't there. So I was like, I knew I kind of had to get back to music. Um, but I didn't know anybody in the scene. I so I cut the EP, the Pine Tree Janitorial EP, and started just getting out there just a little bit, a couple venues and a couple open mics, but enough. Met some people. I was a really long. There was some bandmix.com people that I tried to get involved after I cut the EP. Went through an awful lot of people. And eventually I met Andrew Talent, stage name Andrew Royalty. And that's who I'm in his band, Circles We Draw, and he's in my band, Pine Tree. And we also sort of formed the business entities together. And, we're just looking to grow and get not only not our music out too. It started getting beyond that, especially when we got the radio show. Well, we wanted to get the radio show just because there's this huge scene out here in Colorado that's just underrepresented, and there's few platforms for it. There are some local stations. Some stations have like a local hour on Sunday, but there's just an explosion of great music going on right here in Colorado. And then I was just doing I knew that there was this Denver Open Media thing, because one of the people that was originally in Pine Tree that eventually left, a guitarist named Cody Ulrich, is also a stand-up comic. He did some stuff through Denver Open Media. So I was actually exposed to them. And then when COVID was ending, I was like, I wonder what they're up to. And sure enough, they're just they're a super local radio station. And they're very community oriented. And I was able to contact Calvin, the executive producer of all that. And yeah, basically kind of big radio. It wasn't really that hard of a pitch to get Kind of Big Radio on the air. Mostly I think because their station is hugely hip hop, a little bit of jazz, R&B, a lot of those, even gospel. A lot of those genres are really well represented. And rock really wasn't, and kind of isn't that much, with a couple exceptions on the station. So for someone to be like, oh, I want to curate some really good rock music, a 2-hour block every Thursday, yeah, he was into it. And so that's been a great platform. And from there I've met tons of bands, and yeah, it's been a great thing, and it's ongoing.
So tell me about, your project, the Pine Street Janitorial. Is that what it is?
Yeah, Pine Tree Janitorial Service. That's right.
Yeah. So tell me, how, obviously, you're the solo songwriter behind it, but tell me about the vision for it. What's the kind of the instrumentation that goes into it? Are you guys recording? Are you out doing shows? Give me some of that information.
The answer to all is yes to all the above. The current incarnation is actually a pretty stable thing with 3 enthusiastic members. It would be myself, Andrew Talent on the bass, and Pat Swallow on drums. And so it's kind of a grunge trio, classic grunge trio, which interestingly enough is kind of, when I started it, I just had some songs and I wanted to produce them. And if you listen to my debut EP, you'll hear a little bit of grunge, a little bit of singer-songwriter, a little bit of folk, a little bit of, it's a kind of a mixed record in terms of an aesthetic. But then again, I was just me trying to find my feet, trying to see if I could produce anything, much less have a, strong point of view. But I always did want it to be sort of a really kind of fast and loose grunge, operation. I mean, going back to Nirvana, of course, which is where it's, I guess, sort of springs from anyway, plus the extended 90s rock movement, of course. So that's it. And the vision is to be very much that, and to, in a sense, I didn't feel like this going into it, but now I'm really kind of into it. Now I'm like, we have kind of a point of view where we're pushing back against some of the aesthetics that I feel like get carried away in maybe neuter music in a weird way. Like just there's a lot of production going on, and even going to live, talking about live. Yes, we get out and play live. There's lots of places around Denver where we try to and have, but sometimes you have bands that have like a backing track, have some backing whatever, this, that, and the other thing, or they play to a click. And I get it. I like big Pink Floyd concerts synced to videos as much as the next stoner. But honestly, when I see live music, I really love it to be live, extemporaneous, off the cuff, kind of unpredictable. And that's where we're going for. So when you hear us, it's not necessarily, we try to be good with tempo, but the tempo is going to vary, going to play loud guitars. It's going to be kind of sloppy, but I guess the hope is that there's kind of an emotion and humanity that carries through that maybe gets lost when you overproduce music a little bit.
Okay. And so where do you kind of want to see that project kind of go to over, the next 5 or 10 years? It sounds like you've been working on it for a significant amount of time. Maybe you're at where you want to see it to go.
Since 2018, basically. 2018 is the inception, even though it's taken me until essentially last year to get to the lineup.
Sure. Yeah. And that's like one of the hardest parts of getting a band together is keeping it together.
Yeah. And we just cycle, and cycling through. Well, I mean, some people just, no, it doesn't work out right away. Sometimes it, like you said, it kind of works, or sometimes, yeah, it works for a couple months and then they lose interest. There's all these things.
Sure. So with that kind of revolving door for musicians, if it were, and hopefully it doesn't, to kind of fall apart, would you continue with that band name and just continue to write on your own?
Yes. I mean, I do own that's one of the first things. You just look up Music Biz 101, figure out your naming and logo rights. So I did, and I retain those. So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could certainly just keep on keeping. We're working on an LP right now. And putting a lot of my best material into this LP, and don't have too much back catalog left after this one will be done. So it'll be an interesting time to move forward as a musician, because starting a band, if you have a back catalog of a couple dozen songs, maybe, or even whatever, you got something to work with. But if you kind of chew through them, or at least, some of them might not even work for the band. So then you have a subset of that and you're like, well, this is what we have left. But that's probably be an exciting time. Means I'll have to be creative and see if I could dig in and make some music, but I'm not even worried about that now. I just got to record this LP and get it out.
Yeah, focus on where you're at for sure.
Yeah.
So with all the time that you have been working on music and the various different aspects of it, what are some of your favorite memories that stand out to you?
Well, any good shows. I've played my share of good shows with Sturgeon Mill, a couple with Pine Tree. Definitely a few in recent memories with Circles We Draw, and with members of Ancient Echoes, which is another excellent local band. I think we're going to be forming this kind of like 90s cover, speaking of 90s cover band called Dirty Flannel, which sort of got incepted at this biker bar out near Golden. Just an assemblage of 7 musicians that never even played together, but we figured out a bunch of songs to play at this biker bar. What's that called? Dirty Dogs. Huge stage, really impressive. So it was like a good memory recent. And I'm not a biker bar kind of guy, but I drove up. It was like something out of a movie. Just a whole lot full of Harleys and a big L-shaped building. And then the stage was huge. Anytime you have a really good stage, even if the crowd is not there, I still kind of enjoy it. But of course, it's best when there's enthusiastic people in the audience. And so that's, I guess, anytime you're actually connecting to people, those are good memories.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right. Well, where can people check out your social media and see the stuff that you're putting out?
Yeah. Gosh, so I gotta run through several of them real fast, but they're actually redundant because they're all the same across platforms. So Pine Tree Janitorial Service, grunge band, is Pine Tree JS on all the socials, and even has that domain registered as a website. Circles We Draw is at Circles We Draw everywhere, has that domain registered. And Kind of Vague Records is at Kind of Vague Records. I want to say not necessarily everywhere, but it's on several platforms. And Kind of Vague Radio is a group on Facebook, and it's at Kind of Vague Radio. It's groups/Kind of Vague Radio. Phew, all that stuff.
Awesome. I'll have you send me links for all that stuff so I can make sure they're correct as well.
Oh, and maybe I'll still shout out to the you could listen to past episodes of Kind of Vague Radio on Mixcloud at mixcloud.com/Kind of Vague Radio.
All right. Well, what's a message that you would want to put out there to everybody? Just something in general that you feel you resonate with.
Something I resonate with. Jeez. I don't like to, honestly, I don't like to be, too preachy or judgmental or morality police or anything. So I'll try, I don't know, just, I guess tolerance that, have some tolerance towards other people, even people different than you or that have different viewpoints, which I want to say cuts liberally as well. Cause we're all pretty much artistic liberals and whatever. But speaking of going to a biker bar, et cetera, you have to learn to grow thick skin. You got to learn how to be tolerant and to walk into and talk to people of wildly different viewpoints and just learn how to be cool, man. There's a time and place to try to put your point of view across. So that's my philosophy there.